Alrighty, everybody. I think we're live. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today from wherever in the world you're listening from for our conversation on food justice and community regeneration. My name is Lexi Basquette, and this is actually my first time hosting a webinar for Freight Farms. Normally, I'm the farm manager and the freight farmer here at our Boston headquarters. And today I have the absolute pleasure of talking with two members of Pillsbury United Communities, which is a nonprofit organization based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that tackles a variety of food justice and social justice issues with a creative set of holistic and super inspirational solutions. So Micah and Ethan, are we all online?
Yes. Hey there. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy lives to come chat with us. So thanks a lot. Okay, so let's get into some quick introductions. If I could just have both of y'all introduce yourself and say a little bit about what your role at Pillsbury is, and then we'll do a fun little icebreaker. You can tell me what your favorite herb is. It'll be good to go.
Yeah, totally. Hi guys, my name is Micah. I'm the hydroponic specialist at Pillsbury United Communities, and my favorite herb is sage.
Great choice.
My name is Ethan Neal, and I'm the food systems manager. So I manage our food shelves, our free community meal programs, and then all the urban agriculture, hydroponic and outdoors. And my favorite herb is chives, actually.
That's an awesome answer too. And then once again, I'm Lexi, I'm the farm manager here, and my favorite herb, even though it's a little bit of a polarizing subject, I really love cilantro. So I'm sorry if that offends anybody off the bat, but very cool. So we'll just do a brief sort of overview of the agenda of what we'll be talking about today. So we can all be on the same page. So first we're going to start with a little bit of an introduction to Pillsbury United Communities, sort of who you are, and what you do outside of the realm of the food piece. And then we'll zoom in specifically about what the role of food justice is sort of in the greater fight for equality and social justice. We'll talk a little bit about the demographic breakdown of the different neighborhoods and communities within Minneapolis that you guys serve, and sort of how that's reflected in the different community sort of hubs that are placed around the city. And we'll focus specifically about the food service program, which is where both of y'all work, and sort of that's where the ecosystem piece plays in. There's a whole lot of different pieces there that are all tied together in a pretty impressive way. So definitely really excited to get into that. And we'll talk about the very, very special grocery store that is sort of at the center of all of this. That's actually where the freight farm that Micah operates is located in. So we were just speaking before this came on that y'all had your first harvest yesterday. So definitely excited to talk about that with you. And then we'll shift gears a little bit and talk about sort of what it's been like to operate a food program in the midst of these two simultaneous crises that are going on, and sort of what your firsthand experiences has been, especially since this has definitely impacted both of you directly and both of your programs directly. So I know we're all really interested to hear about that. And then to kind of round it out, we'll talk about sort of future plans and what's sort of on the horizon for Pillsbury and for both of your programs, and what we can all sort of look forward to seeing from both of you guys in the future. Very cool. And then sort of at the end, we'll save about 10 to 15 minutes for an audience question and answer section. And if for our listeners at any point in this talk, if you have any questions, there should be a question and answer box on your screen. You can just type those in and we'll get to them at the end. And then one more sort of housekeeping item, all of this is recorded. So if there's anything you missed and wanted to come back to, or you have any friends who weren't able to join us live today, this should be available tomorrow to watch. Sound good? How you guys feeling? You ready to get into it?
Yeah, definitely.
Ready as I'll ever be.
Awesome, glad to hear it. Alrighty, so can you give us a little bit of background on how Pillsbury United Communities came to be and what sort of resources that you guys offer to the residents of Minneapolis?
Yeah, I'll take that one on. So Pillsbury United Communities was really born out of the settlement house movement, which was really popular, especially in England, and then moved over to the States as a way to address neighborhood issues, not by outsiders coming in necessarily and providing those, but to really work within the community. And they literally had settlement houses that were connected to the community centers. And folks went and lived within the community at that time to really try to find out what resources were needed and what resources were lacking. We know every neighborhood in Minneapolis and we know every community needs different things. So we need to be really aware of what are we serving, what programs are we providing that are really tailored to the specific neighborhoods and to the specific communities that they serve. And Pillsbury was born out of that 141 years ago. And we continue to constantly evolve. So our programming will constantly evolve with the needs of the community. So what we look like this year looks really different 20 years ago, which looks different than 100 years ago. And we're always going to keep evolving with our community and moving at the speed of community, as our president and CEO likes to say. And what that looks like now is we have the 4 neighborhood centers kind of dotted throughout the city that still provide that same type of community-informed and tailored programming. And then we, of course, have the North Market, our one-of-a-kind grocery store on the north side.
Very cool. And I know that you guys have sort of a wide umbrella of, you're kind of involved in sort of media resources, you're involved in sort of like tax and financial help resources. So just like a broad sort of scheme of any sort of thing that people could be sort of seeking. I definitely want to touch on sort of the media element of it. I see this photo that we have sort of in the middle here. That seems to be a radio station, it looks like.
I am in my office right above that radio station called KRSM. You can stream it online if you'd like. It's a community-powered, low FM radio station here in South Minneapolis. And really the cool thing about that, it's all about giving community the voice and to control their narrative. This concept that stories are told about our communities, about people of color, about people that are LGBTQ, but they oftentimes aren't given the opportunity to control that narrative themselves. In our radio station in South Minneapolis, and then we own a newspaper in North Minneapolis, is focused on elevating the voice of those folks. And so if you tune in at any given time to KRSM, it might be in one of 7 different languages, because we have different languages on that program, including some of the most indigenous language programming, including Ojibwe and Lakota.
That is so amazing. I didn't realize that. That's very, very cool. And in addition to being able to kind of advocate for themselves and elevate their own voices, I imagine just the experience of doing that is so amazing, especially for someone who might want to seek a career in radio or in newspaper in that sort of way. It's pretty difficult to find opportunities like that. So definitely really crucial resource.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So let's talk about sort of how food sort of plays into this. I imagine within sort of the different community centers around the city that food access might be sort of a common thread that you're seeing in multiple sort of communities. So I'm wondering what sort of, what you think the connection between food justice is to sort of the greater scheme of equality and food justice and how, or in social justice, and how sort of all of those tie themselves together.
Micah, would you like to start on that one?
Sure. I think that, it's a fight for equality for a reason. These are very long, intense, complex conversations that we're having that are very exhausting to have. And if equality is the end goal, there also needs to be a focus on what's happening day to day. That is, what people can afford to eat to sustain these conversations, but also to go to work, to pay rent, to family. And I think with the industrial food system, there isn't always a prioritization of high quality of food. It's more on high quantity of food. And high quality food is expensive. Farmers markets are expensive. Local food is expensive. Organic produce is very expensive and not always affordable to everybody. To say to people that they have to have these long conversations and take care of day-to-day needs, and also travel long distances to find food at decent rates, it's ridiculous. If we can focus in a lot more on the day-to-day needs around food access, food affordability, then I think that's crucial in the longer term fight for equality.
Definitely. It makes me think a little bit about sort of the concept of food sustainability in general, and sort of how maybe this is coming from sort of my bias as a white person, but I hear that term and I sort of think about, environment and climate sort of pieces. And I don't really think about the fact that, you can't exclude food justice from that, because you can't have sustainability if it's not meeting everyone's needs. It's not going to be the solution if not everybody's involved with that. And sort of similarly with the fight for climate justice, things like race and segregation and sort of history, all of those are super important pieces that can't be overlooked in order to create an actual solution that's going to kind of cycle itself and be beneficial for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. So then let's go into a little bit about some of these different neighborhoods that you guys are working with. Minneapolis is actually a super diverse city. So can you tell us about some of the different community centers around town and what the communities look like that those centers are
Yeah, I'll do that one. I love Minneapolis. I've been here for just about 10 years. Originally came here from college. I'm from more of a rural outdoor farming space growing up. And that's kind of what I really love about Pillsbury, is that we do have all these pockets in these different centers. However, something that we don't love about Minneapolis is it is a fairly segregated community, whether that was government mandated while we were shaping our city, or if it's self-segregation at this point where people like to live near their houses of worship or where there are grocery stores. That has a piece of it. I am actually in the Phillips neighborhood, where I would say about 60% of my day is actually in Spanish. I'm a Spanish interpreter as well. And so we have a very large Latinx community, folks that speak Spanish. And then we're also home to the largest urban Native American community. So right across the street is Indian Health Board and Native American Community Clinic and Little Earth and these Native projects. So it's a big community that has a lot of different cultures represented in it. Cedar Riverside is home to one of the largest Somali diasporas in the world, including Somalia, East African diasporas, I should say, including Somalis, Oromo, Eritreans especially. We're also home to one of the largest Liberian communities in the world. And so a lot of that lives in Cedar Riverside. So we're working a lot with East Africans in our Cedar Riverside location. And then the north side has always kind of been the traditional African-American, generational African-American folks that have stayed on the north side. So a lot of our work is geared towards that on the north side of the city.
Very interesting, definitely. I think that might be surprising to some of our listeners who had sort of previously thought that Minneapolis, because it has been historically so white, for it to have all this diversity there. You said that was due to one of the largest refugee resettlement programs?
Yeah, Lutheran Social Services was a really big factor in that, especially in the 80s and 70s and 80s when we started bringing in a lot of Hmong folk. That was kind of the first refugee group in the 80s. Obviously, before that, it was a lot of the Germans, Swedish, Norwegian folks that were coming in the early 1900s, 1800s. And then that demographic has really switched. So it is a very large refugee community that we have here in Minneapolis.
Yeah, definitely. I imagine sort of the influx of a bunch of new people into this space has sort of caused a little bit of a gap in generational wealth, sort of with folks who have been here for such a long time, and folks who are sort of newer to the neighborhood. Can you speak a little bit to what that's looked like and how that sort of plays out? In
terms of generational wealth?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, generational wealth is something that we can talk about like it's historic, or we can talk about it as something that's literally been in my parents' life, in our life, right? I come from a family, I'm a 7th generation Iowa farmer. So my folks got their land in the 1800s. Obviously, there was a lot of racism that was included in 1858 when my folks moved to Iowa, my ancestors. But even going up through World War II, my family then got to go serve in World War II. They came back to GI benefits and were able to own housing and able to go to school. And that's what really allowed my family to be able to get past that poverty line to now being college educated and owning a house and a cabin, that kind of life. That all started because my grandparents were World War II vets who were allowed access to GI Bills and home ownership. And that's not something that our folks of color were allowed to do even through the 1960s. So this is our parents and our lives that this is still happening in. So you can see that played out very much so in Minneapolis, and you can see that in terms of our rates of home ownership here, business ownership. When we get to the George Floyd, things like that, we'll definitely talk about that a little bit more. But you can see that historically and really in our current situations as well.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it seems like there's definitely a need for the opportunity and sort of economic opportunity for people coming into this space. Let's talk a little bit about how your community works within its community to sort of tackle some of these issues. Can you talk to me a little bit about the components to the food system that you guys have created and sort of how they all interact with one another?
Yeah, I'll take this one on too. Micah's new to the city, by the way, y'all. He just moved to Minneapolis. I happen to have it tattooed on my arm, so we're coming from little different places. So I've been with Pillsbury for 9+ years now, so I've really seen every facet of our food system, starting as a volunteer in our food shelf, then moving up to a food shelf worker, coordinator, to now managing the system. And what we've really wanted to do is to make sure that we were treating the different neighborhoods equitably. One thing I saw when I got into my position is even our 2 food shelves weren't receiving the same kinds of foods, the same amount of foods. We were very produce heavy in our location, while Cedar Riverside was getting pushed with a lot of canned foods. We want to make sure there was an equitable distribution of those things, even internally. We can't really talk about equity externally if we don't look internally first. And so that was kind of our first step. So it was really connecting these different facets of the food system so they're working together rather than like all these separate little programs. So we have the 2 food shelves, and those 2 food shelves provide groceries for a little over probably about 6,000 families at this point each month. The 2 community meal programs are serving anywhere from 100 to 250 meals a day through the week. Healthy meals as well, and we try to make sure there's as much of our own farmed material in those meals as possible. The urban gardens are then a big part of that. And then the change this year that we've really seen is the ability to kind of start making our own brand in our own farm, where we're actually now selling this produce into North Market. So we grow this food in these gardens with ourselves, volunteers, people in the community. It's then picked up via bicycle, which we have a bike shop that teaches youth experiencing homelessness how to build and maintain bikes and have a bike courier service and their own bike shop. They come and pick up the produce. They bike it over to North Market. They do the sale. They then pick up any of the produce that wasn't sold. They then actually pick up and bike back to our community meal program. So it's recycled into our community meal programs and prepared that day or the next day to try to mitigate as much loss as possible. And with that, we're really excited to be able to say that we've eliminated fossil fuels from that urban agriculture food system. Obviously, there are still big trucks that bring the pallets of food that we get for our food shelves and community meals, still use trucking. But at least in our urban ag, we've been able to eliminate the fossil fuels from that. And then, of course, the freight farm is literally in the parking lot of North Market, so they're not on a bike schedule, because Micah harvests and walks across the parking lot and delivers it straight to North Market.
That is so cool. You guys must be so proud that you've been successful at eliminating fossil fuels from your distribution network. That's such a huge accomplishment. So big congratulations on that. That's so awesome. So going back to the urban garden piece, it seems sort of like community and culture and health are some of the major kind of pillars of your mission and organization. And I recall speaking earlier about how one of your urban gardens is a space for East African farming traditions and sort of the passing on of that knowledge. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the importance of being culturally responsive to the communities that you work with, and sort of the idea of providing culturally relevant food?
Yeah, a great example is literally across the street of which I'm sitting, which we are a managing partner of a program called the 24th Street Farming Coalition. We happen to be on 24th Street, which is a native-led organization that's all about food sovereignty and bringing back traditional native medicines. So in that garden, it's done in a circle, and we have medicine makers, and we have folks from the reservations come down and teach classes. And we do that with Indian Health Board and Native American Community Clinic to be able to actually grow native medicines for native doctors to treat native patients with native medicines, once again, right here in the heart of an urban center. So across the street, it's not the beautiful row cropping that I grew up in, because it shouldn't be, right? It needs to be done in a traditional circle. We grow things that we don't necessarily eat, like tobacco there. We grow the sage for smudging, things like that. So it's all about a place that we can kind of reconnect to a culture that was very much lost, that wasn't lost to the broader sense, but was tried to be extinguished, I should say, that really has maintained, and it's kind of growing once again, which is a beautiful program to be a part of, is passing down that ancestral knowledge and that indigenous knowledge, that we're just like really honored to even be at the table of that group and really help them with their programming. For the East African farming one, that is like always a piece of work that we're doing in the Brian Coyle Center. I wouldn't say we're quite there yet. Obviously, we have elders in the community that come out and garden with us, and they're teaching youth about that, but it's not quite a formalized program this year. But that's the one that we're really going to try to formalize next year.
Awesome. And I think I recall you saying in sort of your Latinx community, the importance of having masa available for not only food that's being served in a community meal style, but actually something that's available on the shelves for people to be able to bring home, because food's not just about, the nutrition quality. It's so much about the comfort and being able to have those ingredients that one can work with to feel familiar and
yeah.
comfort.
And it's a huge dignity piece as well, I always share a quick little story where I was offered 2 pallets of flour tortillas, and I was like, heck yes, new in my career, like, heck yes, let's get these tortillas in, they'll go out really fast. And nobody wanted them. And I was like, what's going on? And Jovita, our food shelf coordinator, who's from Mexico, was like, none of our people want flour tortillas. We want corn tortillas. But on top of that, we want maseca, because we want to be able to be making our tortillas ourselves. And then that was a huge learning moment for me, where it kind of clicked of how important that piece is. And so it was something I learned very early on in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching gears just a little bit from sort of the community, how it relates to culture, but sort of also community, how it relates to health. You had mentioned previously that the Pillsbury food system is housed under the community health sort of umbrella. Can you speak to a little bit about the role of diet in chronic disease prevention and management, and sort of how the importance of fresh food within your food ecosystem, how that sort of helps play into that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw that play out at the very start of COVID, especially, where the food banks, bless their hearts, were trying their best. But the idea was to make all these food boxes that were just full of canned food, processed food, canned meats, things that our community, if you served our community, are things that they don't necessarily want. They started treating everyone as a monolith of some kind of prepper that was like stocking their basement full of canned foods to go on for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. And really, when you work within community, they're just saying, can you please just give us vegetables once a week? Like, we just want healthy food. And if we would to really like follow that traditional food model sense of taking in all the donated cans and stuff, we're going to exacerbate every health condition that we see in the neighborhoods in which we work. The high sodium, the heart disease, the diabetes, all things that we want to look at through a healthcare lens, when really like a lot of those are food related. And if we're really forcing people to live on food shelf diets, I can guarantee you're going to see that on the back end of it as well. So we've always wanted to put our money where our mouth is, in the sense of really investing in high quality food, produce, which then fell into like these urban gardens, which fell into a freight farm, right? That's where we've always really wanted, where we identified the community health concern. And that's where we want to really do our work, is to have a different model of the traditional food shelf that's really focused on that healthy food.
Yeah, totally. And I think that that plays in sort of to the dignity piece as well, like being able to eat fresh food, like really,
Mm-hmm.
it really makes a big difference. And same thing sort of with like the idea of food as medicine. You know, you want to eat healthy food before you get a diagnosis, but also sort of on the other end of it, if you have an illness and you need specific food to be able to, help yourself out in that kind of way. The fresh food piece is really crucial. So sort of on the same vein of health, let's talk about some of the really amazing health resources that are actually offered at North Market grocery store. I remember hearing about this for the first time. This absolutely blew me away, and I really wish that all grocery stores could have sort of the resources that that North Market has. So what ways of supplementing health does North Market provide for its community?
Yeah, definitely. I can take some of these. So I'm fairly new to PUC. I started in May, starting up the freight farm here, which is in the parking lot of North Market. So a little bit about North Market. It's a Black-owned and operated grocery store that serves Northside Minneapolis communities in an area that was formerly a food apartheid. And it was created joint efforts between PUC donors, the community, and neighboring North Memorial Hospital. And here we really tackle health and food together. We think that they're one and the same, kind of along what Ethan was saying previously. What's nice about this grocery store particularly is there are pharmacists on hand, happy to explain new medications, medication management, health education, clinic referrals, and then nutrition counseling. We actually even have Talk to a Doctor Wednesday, where anyone in the community can come in, and outside of a more formal clinical setting, they can just have a conversation with a doctor. It's less intimidating and encourages more regular check-ins with people, and it promotes self-advocacy in the community. When I first got to North Market, I had never seen anything quite like it. It's kind of like a co-op when you walk in, but there's also this huge like community health aspect to it that's literally attached to like the far left of the grocery store. It was awesome to see.
Yeah, man, like the pharmacist and nutritionist and just physician element is super huge. Again, like if all of our grocery stores could have these components to them, I think the world would be such a different place. And especially with, the healthcare piece, whether or not it's financially an option to go to the doctor, or if you're able to get the time off to go see a doctor, or even if your doctor isn't someone that you trust and you feel like you can kind of candidly speak to. All of those are major components that I feel like this alternative outlet of receiving healthcare just like absolutely definitely helps in with that. And also the nutrition piece, I definitely can speak to from personal experience. How I got into food personally is my complete lack thereof of nutrition education as a child. And I went to school in Vermont, and being in a place eating real food really for the first time kind of just like blew me away. And I imagine for a lot of people, their nutrition understanding is sort of their baseline, elementary school, public school, not super informative and not super useful information. So if you have these diagnoses, to be able to talk to someone who can really communicate this in a way that is meaningful, not just this is bad and this is good, but this is good for you and this is why. These properties, or garlic has anti-inflammatory properties, or these berries have antioxidant properties, and this is why it's specifically going to help you. I think that sort of knowledge is super empowering and also helps really deepen an individual's connection with food.
Yeah, totally. And just the opportunity for someone to literally walk alongside you and help you put stuff into your little cart for what's personally good for your diet and your health.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish someone could do that with me when I go grocery
I
shopping.
know.
That's a great resource. And Micah, I want to circle back to something you had said earlier in terms of food apartheid. I know this is a phrase that we had used in one of our previous conversations, and it's a phrase that's sort of new to me. So if you could explain a little bit about what that means and how that's different from a food desert, which is sort of more of the maybe more common sort of tossed around term.
Yeah, totally. I think we had a conversation earlier, and food desert was the term that I was using probably up until very recently. It's only when you really dig into the meaning behind those words, food access and unequal distribution of food. That's not a natural occurrence, which oftentimes desert implies natural occurrence. It's more of a systemic issue that we have within our institutions that we need to look more critically at. So I think food apartheid really embodies those elements.
Totally. Yeah. Food desert really takes away sort of the like intention and sort of like the blame in that space. And also kind of just conjures an image of like a barren sort of space instead of somewhere that has a lot of potential. And, it really kind of just like brings it down in a way that it really shouldn't. So thank you for kind of teaching me this new term. And that's definitely similarly what I'm going to be using in the future when we talk about stuff like this. So I really appreciate that.
It's all Ethan, all Ethan.
No.
So in addition to the health piece and also the making food affordable at North Market, you guys even go even further than that and do a lot more sort of like community opportunity elements to here in terms of sort of hiring and in terms of like social entrepreneurship. Since North Market is actually a nonprofit grocery store, can you talk a little bit about how that influences sort of this array of services that you're able to have that might be harder to do in a traditional grocery store sort of chain model?
Sure. I also think it's helpful kind of I skipped over this part, but the impetus to this grocery store, why it was started originally, was Pillsbury United researched the area. They were seeing that there was a really high level of SNAP and WIC enrollments in this area of North Minneapolis, but at the same time, there was a very low redemption, very low usage rates. And so looking more into that, we found that by talking to community people and community partners, there really wasn't a close grocery store nearby. So that's why North Market was born in the beginning. We had no prior knowledge on how to operate a grocery store, but we kind of took this risk and have been building something great with the community in mind. And also hiring a lot of people from the community. We have really good and competitive hourly pay and benefits within the store for employees. We also really want to reflect the community products. I think I was in the store yesterday and I saw like a pizza sauce and then some cold beverages from people in the community who often would have a harder time getting into larger box stores like Cub or Lunds and Byerly. And then at the same time, what's special about North Market and the freight farm component to it is because we operate with razor thin margins on the shelf. We are able to eliminate the middleman either by full cycle with our delivery of produce from our other farms, our outdoor gardens into North Market, or from the freight farm directly. And so with eliminating the middleman, we're allowed to focus less on the profit and on the revenue, but focus more on the dignity and the opportunity for community growth.
Totally. Yeah, I think not a lot of grocery shoppers realize that within sort of the, if you look at your dollar, about this much is going to farmers and about this much is going to grocery stores and about this much in the middle is going to that delivery portion. That was certainly really interesting to learn for the first time. So removing that piece definitely is one of the key components to having that be such an affordable space for your community. So that's definitely important. And similarly as well, like in a traditional grocery store, you wouldn't be able to have that shelf space to be able to focus on those local products. So to have that opportunity to get that sort of economic opportunity and get that sort of entrepreneurship opportunity and just the pride of seeing something that you created in a store like this. I mean, I imagine that's like really a beautiful piece as well too.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, so sort of on the topic of that, of the freight farm, let's sort of transition over to that. Micah, since it's in the parking lot and you really get to engage sort of with the community of North Market as well when you're doing your harvest and you're doing your drop-offs. Can you talk a little bit about your story of how you got to your role at Pillsbury, and also how this is sort of different from sort of previous food operations that you've been involved with?
Yeah, sure. So growing up, I was really involved in North Chicago as an intern, as community food systems program manager at a nonprofit out there. We did a lot of food rescue programs, food redistribution programs in Round Lake and Waukegan, Illinois, so northern Illinois. Um, and throughout college, I was studying biology, but I never really had an interest in the pre-med track. I wanted to stay with ag. And my first job after college was actually on a 40-acre organic farm. And I was just a farmhand, so I was harvesting, washing, packing. But I was actually really drawn to the greenhouse operation that we had. We had a bunch of heirloom tomatoes, trellis in there. And I wanted to get more involved with controlled environment agriculture. But honestly, I didn't know where to start. In the Midwest, there are not a lot of training programs for hydroponics, for aquaponics, at least at the time that I was looking. And what I found a training course out on the East Coast. And I went out to New York and I was involved with 2 commercial grow operations, one square roots and one small hold, focusing on leafy greens at the first and specialty mushrooms at the second. And, you know, I always had this passion for food redistribution and access. And I also now have this hydroponic commercial growing experience. So I was always looking for a way to get back to my roots. To use this technology to bring food to people at affordable prices. And actually, we just had our first harvest the other day, which went directly into North Market, which was super exciting to like finally get the farm here up and running, restarted, and selling to our people at more affordable prices than I've been involved with before.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what you've been growing, and sort of how having that touch point of what the community is sort of looking for, how that influences what you'll kind of continue to be growing and using the farm for in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think that with some of the products that we are moving forward with or investigating with, they all start with conversations with our customers, what they want to see on the shelves, what like doesn't look fresh enough there. So that's what we use to really inform what we're trying out in our farm at first. So we have 12 different varieties of crops. We are trialing 3 mini romaine heads, green oak leaf lettuce, 2 different types of basils, rosemary, thyme, lemon balm, sage, and mint. And then we are also installing a big vinyl wrap sticker type thing on the side of our freight farm. So I think that'll foster a lot more organic conversations. Just, you know, people pull into the parking lot to shop at North Market, they check out the farm, and then they can see that produce in the grocery store when they go inside. We're hoping to have a lot more conversations with people about what else they want to see on the shelves from us too.
Absolutely. And I recall from one of our previous conversations, you mentioning your sort of last, before working in this space, your sort of last contact with the produce that you were working with was sort of packaging it, and then it went off into the world and you never saw it again. And I know similarly from being a farmer, being able to package something and then to bring it into that space and then to interact with the people who eat it. And it's just like a really just emotional kind of experience, and like a really prideful thing to be able to see the people and make those sort of relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the traditional farm, like the best part about it was working with CSA pickup and like seeing the people come in and pick up their boxes for the week. And then, you know, switching more to the commercial grow, you package, you send it off to a Whole Foods. And occasionally you'll see someone like picking up your product from the shelves. But I did miss that like person to person contact and communication and feedback, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very cool that with it being in the parking lot, and I actually had the pleasure of coming to meet Ethan in February and getting to go into North Market. I wish I could have met you, Micah, but
Next time.
Our timelines didn't cross over, but I definitely anticipate going back, because despite spending 3 hours hanging out and chatting in North Market, that was not enough time for me to hang out there and get a whole sort of scope of the space. But it's really surprising how big a freight farm is. it's in the parking lot, like it's weirdly just flows below the radar. So I think a vinyl wrap is totally a great way to encourage people to sort of engage with it, and also able to sort of respond really quickly to the needs of the space, especially with the seasonality of Minneapolis, and being able to find out if they're looking for something and then, you know, seed it that day, and then 8 weeks later it's available and ready to be grown, and or after it's being grown, available to be purchased in that space. So, no.
Yeah, and I think that the vinyl wrap too, we have a little bit of copy on there about like what's going on inside the container, and the actual sticker is more like a tearaway of the farms. So you'll see the grow towers, and I believe some of them have plants growing out of them on the final design. But you know, we hope to educate young people to bring them into this circle, teach them about what hydroponics is, you know, from seed to shelf, how this farm works and functions. And I think just expanding that knowledge is really important for growing this industry, but also giving people opportunities in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely touch on sort of what your future plans are for turning this into sort of an educational space a little bit later in the presentation, but we're gonna switch gears a little bit and sort of talk about what your sort of personal impacts have been from Pillsbury and from just immediately working in the food shelves with these two crises that have been going on. I remember hearing that North Market was actually able to stay open throughout all of the kind of protests that have been going on. Can you speak a little bit about, you know, what that's been like?
Yeah. It's been interesting, of course. So to put it in perspective, I'm sitting about maybe 15 blocks away from where George Floyd was killed. And then the bike shop actually is just 2 blocks. It shares like the same corridor. And so it's had a huge impact. Overnight, we created, whether we're going to use the term food desert or food apartheid, we helped create one of the largest food emergencies that we've seen in a very long time, right? So the one other grocery store, especially in North Minneapolis, it reopened yesterday, actually, you know, after 2 months. But for those 2 months, it had been closed. There was a lot of disruption in the north side and on the south side. A lot of buildings were burned. A lot of our grocery stores, we were lost. We still have the high unemployment rates of COVID. We were hitting and spiking numbers anyway. So a little context behind that in the food shelf world is year over year for the last 4 years, Minnesota has hit its highest food shelf visits ever. And that's even going back to the financial crisis of kind of 08, 09. Even though we have an unemployment rate that was at about 3.5, one of the lowest in the country, we were still seeing more food shelf visits every single year. And so we were always preparing for how do we scale, and then overnight, we literally had to scale. What we really did see, though, is community stepping up, schools, churches, mosques, community organizations, everyone kind of turned into what I call like a non-typical food distribution center or non-traditional food distribution center. And that was awesome. It really gave us time to breathe and prepare for that week or two. However, just like we see in every kind of disaster recovery, is there's a lot of support for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then it starts going down. Those places are starting to close or they have closed. So places that were taking on 2,000 people a week and helping them, those places are closed now and they're all coming back to our doors. And so we've actually commandeered an entire gymnasium and have it filled up. And we've been working with DHS and the state on how do we get all the supplies and everything like that to really serve the community, because the rebuilding effort doesn't happen overnight either. And so we need to be prepared for what this looks like, not just 3 days afterwards, not 3 weeks afterwards, 3 months, but 3 years, because this is going to be a long-term process that we go through here in Minneapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I recall you saying something to the effect of, if there's no organization behind the donations, then all of it's going to go to waste. And you've had a big influx of need, but it's great to hear that you've also had like a big influx of resources as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that our job is special because we put so much work into produce, but when you compare produce to canned goods, produce takes a lot more work. It takes a lot more storage capacity. It's what the community wants and doesn't have access. like all those little free libraries, people are putting canned foods and spaghettis and things like that for that true like kind of emergency need. But it's not really what community wants and needs at this moment as well. And so that's where we still put our focus. But it has been a big effort. And I think a lot of people realized how hard our job was, which is good in its own way. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's really amazing that even in a time of crisis, you've still been able to provide that fresh food and not have to just like fully just like, all right, let's, you know, it's important, but not right now. Like we got to scrap it and just go back to that traditional model. It's awesome that you haven't, you know, really somehow have not dropped the ball in that sort of space. That's like massively inspirational.
Doing our best. I wouldn't say a ball hasn't been dropped, but we're juggling a lot of balls. You know, it's still impressive when you juggle 15 balls and just drop one, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's good to hear that yesterday that the other grocery stores opened back up, because last time we talked, you had said that North Market was essentially feeding pretty much everyone in that 10-mile radius, which is huge.
Yeah. And it was like 10. I wasn't sure if 10 is the exact answer, but that very large radius of North Side. And then they had a lot of non-traditional food distribution sites that like popped up. So if you think of like the big military tents and 100 volunteers, and those folks stepped up, and there are lines all the way down Broadway. So like blocks of lines of folks waiting. So we were very pleased that North Market was able to stay open and stay true to its commitment to community.
That's really incredible. Wow. So yeah, so looking forward just a little bit. I know we're kind of getting close to that Q&A section, so we'll kind of close this out with looking forward to sort of the future of Pillsbury and some of your initiatives. Micah, I know we definitely want to touch on with you something that I'm super excited about, is the ability for the farm to be used as an educational tool in helping people from the community, but specifically young folks and people of color, to be able to interact with the hydroponic system for the first time. Can you talk to us a little bit about your plans for that and how important that is?
Yeah, and I think I was telling one of my directors this the other day, that when I was looking for hydroponic training courses, I couldn't find anything in the Midwest. So when I came across this job opportunity, I jumped at it for the opportunity to teach other people in the Midwest, particularly people of color in this space, to work their way up the ladder into management opportunities, because I think that's very rare. But you have to start on the ground, and I would love when it's safe to do so to have a few interns in the farm with me, teaching them the ins and outs of maintenance, production, crop planning, and with your system with Farmhand, it makes it a lot easier to do so. But that is looking like it's going to be a few months away, but I'm very excited for the opportunity when it arises.
Yeah, it's definitely on the docket. Yeah, I remember something you had said about we had a great opportunity to redefine what the future of food looks like, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to make sure that workforce is as inclusive as your nonprofit's mission is. And I think that like really kind of just like ties it all together, especially since agriculture technology is such an unfortunately white space, and to be able to like get out there and change that, and remind everyone that sort of the narrative of urban farming is not a white sort of thing, has its roots elsewhere. So to get as much inclusion as possible in it, I think is super awesome and super important.
Yeah, and training for an affordable, like you don't have to pay to be trained.
Exactly.
You get paid to learn. That's the key element, I think.
Absolutely. No more unpaid internships.
Nope. Paid internships. $15 minimum.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's huge. Well, before we sort of transition over to any more, or sort of the Q&A section, I just sort of wanted to wrap this up with, we have a link at the bottom for our listeners. If you are interested in donating and have the ability to donate to Pillsbury, there's a couple different designations of where your donation can go to. If you're interested in the full cycle element or the North Market or any other piece that we've talked about today, please definitely go to that link if you'd like to. I know I've been spending a lot of time on your website and in that area specifically, so I think that's super important. But anything y'all want to sort of add before we move over to our question and answer section?
I'm good. I'm ready for questions.
Okay. Michael, how about you? How are you feeling?
Yeah, feeling good.
Okay, wonderful. So let me just see what folks have been writing in over here. I see I have a big old list right next to me. Um, that is awesome. Let's see. I see actually a variety of different people have asked how Pillsbury gets funding for its different projects. That's a great
Yeah, I'll
question.
speak to that one. So it's a very robust form of funding. So I would say a few years ago, we were mostly government contracts actually for doing a lot of our work. So we get that money from the Department of Human Services, state funding to make sure our food shelves are operating. Hennepin County, our county pays for the meal programs. So we have a lot of connections with the government side of it, but also with the philanthropic side. The other piece people don't realize is just how many Fortune 500 companies are headquartered here. So to give a shout out to the foundation, the Cargill Foundation is actually what helped purchase the freight farm, pays for salaries, pays for wages. So we have a really good relationship with the Cargill Foundation. But then also like McKnight Foundation. And then we're also one of the largest organizations that is part of the United Way for funding. And then really individual donations, just like you kind of just solicited for us on our behalf. So, I mean, those make a really big difference, y'all. Like, people don't realize, like, just how far their dollar goes in terms of, like, food shelves and urban farms. In a food shelf world, every dollar donated to our food shelf, we have $7 worth of buying power with the food banks. And so $1 for a food shelf can really go a long way. So it's kind of that whole robust sense.
Totally. I'd like to piggyback on that just a little bit as well, in terms of donations and sort of the importance of like sustained donations or sort of a pre-planned monthly donation, just because that something like that, even if it, it's a smaller amount every month, that really helps organizations like you guys be able to plan resources effectively and sort of know what they have to work with and really be able to, again, not let anything kind of go to waste. So just a little shout out to that. As well. We have a question from DeFranco, which is, what is the biggest challenge when it comes to North Market's day-to-day operation? It's an interesting one.
Micah, do you have a good answer for that?
Like in relation to the freight farm, I probably answer that one a little bit better.
Sure, we can definitely talk about the freight farm as well. A lot of people were asking sort of about integration of the freight farm as well. So go for it.
Yeah, definitely. Before, I've worked in these systems and they've been monocropped, meaning they've contained only one crop at a time. So if you had 10 containers, you'd have 3 for basil, 3 for chives, or 3 for mint, or whatever else that we're working with. So it was a monoclimate. So it was programmed to grow basil specifically or chives specifically. And so with this one, we have one shipping container and we have 12 different crops within. So it's finding the balance in nutrients and in specs around climate, around CO2 injections and HVAC and lighting. It's finding a balance to make sure all of them are growing healthily. But also it's, I would say pest management is also a huge component to this because pests move around quickly if they get inside. So it's about making sure that you're really up to date with maintenance and IPM throughout your week, throughout your work week, and monthly check-ins, just to make sure everything's operating correctly. Because you can't shut one farm down and operate on the other ones in this type of system.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a good sort of mention of basil, because that's definitely the first one that I think about in terms of growing spaces. That's usually what we sort of separate as like that, like so much more warm climate than pretty much everything else. A lot of things can grow really well together with basil to really thrive wants that warmer space. Although it can definitely be grown, with everybody else, but that's an interesting one to highlight. I have a question from Caleb here, which is also a little shout out. So what you're doing with North Market is incredible and unique. Have you seen interest beyond the immediate community? And do you envision opening more grocery stores similar to North Market in the future?
Yes. We see a lot of folks coming in there to shop and shop with their values, as we like to say. And so we do see that it is kind of held up as a very unique space. It's just celebrated its 2-year anniversary. So I still think the word is still getting out there. People are really interested in like, how sustainable is this? We all know grocery stores budgets are thin on a 3 to 5% kind of rate. So how does it stay in business? How sustainable is it? I think are questions that we are still looking to answer ourselves. But we love being the people to try that out, and we have the backing to be able to do that and to really experiment, which is awesome. Is there any ideas of opening other ones? Not to my knowledge. I know we've talked about loving one in South Minneapolis and having the 2 sides, but I really think that we're still kind of in that pilot 3 to 5 year zone of understanding what we can do better if we do open another store. So I wouldn't say we're there yet, and those conversations aren't at the table quite yet. But of course, it's always in the back of our mind. We believe in the concept, or else we wouldn't have done it. So now we just got to make sure that we can tell funders that, yes, this is the way to go. This is what we've learned. This is how we can improve it, and then we can move it around.
Totally. Yeah, I recall you talking about how you are able to pitch this to funders, and it being sort of more of a like, if you're going to give away free food, then give away free food in a way that benefits the community, that provides jobs, that this major laundry list of things. So I really hope that you guys are able to make another one in the future. I had never heard of a nonprofit grocery store really before we talked about North Market back in February, and I've been learning about a couple more of them as we've come up, but it's a really fascinating idea, and it's working really well. So I wish you all the best.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different unique ones, and ours just happens to have be in big partnership with North Memorial, so the big hospital that's in North Minneapolis as well. And that's where a lot of that healthcare stuff. So this was Blue Cross Blue Shield and these healthcare institutions really coming together, and that kind of makes our space unique in that, even though other nonprofit grocery stores do exist, and that's exciting.
Yeah, very cool. I have another question over here, which is, where does the rest of the food come from for North Market and the food programs that is not actually grown sort of through the hydroponic and through the urban farms that you guys are running and operating? Is that all donations or?
No. The grocery store operates just like a standard grocery store. So anytime you see the big trucks, US Foods, those same distributors, the thing is we just always will put local ahead. And so there are 37 different entrepreneurs that have grocery space inside of our store. Even in Minnesota, we are just really blessed with a lot of food distribution and a hub of a lot of food. It's kind of why Minneapolis, St. Paul was created, where we are, was based a lot on that food. Why we have the Pillsbury name ourselves. It was an original investment from the Pillsbury Doughboy family that kind of started our organization. So a lot of people think we might be the nonprofit arm of Pillsbury, and we're not. It stops at the name. And so the rest of it comes from your traditional mechanisms that other grocery stores would get.
Gotcha. I'm honestly surprised that no one, as far as I can see, has asked about the connection between the Pillsbury tie. So I appreciate you for explaining that, for sure.
They did. That's why I answered it.
Reading some minds. Well, very cool. Well, that kind of just about brings us to the end out here. I think maybe I have time for maybe just one more quick question. Let's see, from Melanie, they ask, do you work with local partners with your freight farm, i.e. for profit or nonprofit?
Yeah, so I think a lot of that is shaking out now, trying to determine, for kids in programming. I think I talked to somebody on the phone just a few weeks ago about growing some herbs in there for a body care line that these girls were working on. They wanted to grow lemons out of the shipping container, and I told them, well, I can't do lemons, but I can do lemon balm. So we're trying that right now, seeing how that shakes out. And then in terms of, bringing people in as interns from the North Minneapolis community, we hope to do that eventually. And then in partnerships outside, building off of it, right now we're in a pilot with North Market, seeing what SKUs we're going to go to market with. And then from there, we'll build out into hopefully some other co-ops, hopefully selling some other co-ops in the area. Or other grocery stores, just depending on how much of product that we can push out, and ensuring that the quality is there too.
So it sounds like a couple of partnerships with like sort of individuals who are looking to sort of be involved in that space, but maybe also something in the future, like working with like a school or working with like sort of another kind of equivalent organization type of partnership.
One big shout out for that one too is working with our local Rotary Club, which we're just awaiting the permits to put solar on top of our freight farm as well. So we're working with solar panels right now to get installed on top of the freight farm with our local Rotary Club. And then we have a lot of partnerships with outside growers that right now we're still in this kind of pilot phase. Micah is new, so we're going to test it out, but then work with the University of Minnesota with their plant science department as well. So just shout out for those future plans as well.
Yes, this is a little bit tangential, but speaking of University of Minnesota, with the soil remediation study that you had told me about, this isn't a question that anyone asked, but I'm just going to throw this in here real quick because I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Can you tell us like a little snippet about the soil remediation study that you were involved with?
Yeah, real quick. So our outdoor farming, we got a grant, and then we've been working with the University of Minnesota Soil Department, where I'm standing actually right now, and where 4 of our 5 outdoor farms are all what's called the arsenic triangle, where we have massive amounts of lead and arsenic from an ammunition factory that was actually across the highway, and it polluted a lot of the soils here. And so we're doing research about how can urban farming help do natural bioremediation of these soils. And what does that look like? And that also includes like water retention rates, so we can tell the city, instead of just a grass field, how much water retention are we actually keeping, which then will stop all the flowage into the Mississippi where it collects all the debris and stuff like that. So we're doing a lot of research in terms of bioremediation and using biochar, using the spent grains from the brewing process. And we're actually doing a lot of this research. In a lot of agricultural research, the product doesn't always make it to the communities. And so it was a beautiful partnership of really teaming up with ag researchers in an urban environment that then we can keep that food within the community as well.
That's so amazing. Obviously urban agriculture is so important for the communities that it serves, but this really takes it sort of a step further since you guys are at the mouth of the Mississippi. And so you are the first opportunity for it to get polluted if things are going to start running off into that space. So yeah, that just blows me away.
Urban ag, it made it into the farm bill this past time. So it's real now.
Hallelujah. Amazing. Well, we are just a couple minutes past 1 o'clock. So I'm going to say thank you to everyone who's been asking these amazing questions. Sorry I couldn't get to every single one of them, but I wanted to thank Micah and Ethan so very much. Thank you so much for doing this with me today. And thank you for all of the time that we've spent working on this. I really hope the best for both of you and your amazing programs, and hopefully you're staying healthy and safe out there. I hope we can talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. All right. And thank you everyone for listening. Again, if you want to get that donation link, that's going to be available in your emails that were sent out here. So again, please, if you're able to do so, think about it. And for everyone here at Freight Farms and from Pillsbury United, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And please stay healthy and safe out there and take care of each other.
Yeah. Bye-bye now.
Bye.